Demos are something that has lost their meaning in the modern video game industry. Once upon a time they had several levels for the player to experience, or at the very least, one decent sized level featuring many of the game's mechanics. More often than not today, however, a demo consists of nothing more than a few minutes of gameplay, acting more as a teaser than an actual demonstration. The developer of the game we're looking at today certainly understands what it means to release a demo of a video game, and that is something I respect, even if I didn't necessarily become convinced to buy the product. And the demo of the game I'm speaking of is Block Survival: Legend of the Lost Islands. Block Survival is an indie FPS survival game developed and published by Pixel Arts and released July 14, 2017. It combines the fast-paced first-person shooter action with a crafting system not that different from Minecraft. While the demo gives great insight into the game's mechanics, it does have some design issues and bugs which leave an impression of unpolish. While Block Survival has crafting mechanics and a focus on survival, it is definitely a fast-paced FPS game first, while survival and crafting comes second. Essentially, the idea of the game is to get through each level by battling your way to the boss, whom you must defeat in order to open a portal to the next one. Throughout the levels you must collect materials by chopping down trees, bashing rocks and ores, looting chests, killing enemies, and simply exploring the environment. As you progress through the game, you can find or buy recipes that allow you to craft weapons and armor, assuming you have the materials required to do so. The way the collecting of the materials and the recipes work really keep the gameplay at a fast pace, and overall it's easy to follow and use, but it isn't without its problems. The first glaring issue I found is that when collecting a recipe it simply didn't unlock anything. This includes buying a recipe at one of the two shops in the demo. It just simply didn't unlock. As to whether a new recipe will unlock or not seems random, with no apparent trigger for it. The second problem with the crafting is that none of the weapons have any forms of stats, meaning there's no way of telling what weapons are better, and it turns into a case of trial and error. It would be nice to be able to tell what damage weapons do before crafting them, as opposed to wasting materials, especially the rare ones. Aside from those problems, the crafting works really well. As for the exploration and combat of the game, it too is really well designed for the most part. Exploration is fast and easy to control, even when needing to jump across gaps. There are a few physics problems with ramps where they slow you down greatly when going up. Some of the interior buildings are also very claustrophobic, with ridiculously narrow corridors and spaces to move through at times. Also, the chests you find scattered throughout the levels sometimes are already open, despite having not previously explored the area, resulting in you being unable to gain the money or recipes they contain. Aside from that, the exploration is a treat. As you make your way through the level, you will also start to become hungry, where you will need to eat food that you find. Food can be bought at shops or found in the environment or from defeated enemies. The shops allow you to buy ammo, new recipes, food, and upgrade your weapon for a price. The upgrading of weapons is a bit of a gamble, where it works like a slot machine. You need to click stop to stop the actual roll, and you gain the bonus that it stops on. It works pretty well, even if it isn't overly exciting. The combat is pretty decent too. Just like the exploration, it is fast paced, often pitting you against two or more enemies at once. The weapons feel good to use, especially the firearms. My gripes with the combat would be that the AI would be, shall we say, very basic. While this isn't a game breaker for FPS veterans, it makes the game a bit underwhelming. The hit detection is also a bit off. Often it feels like you're getting hit when you shouldn't be, and sometimes your shots will miss when they shouldn't have, especially when shooting near the edges of the enemy character models. Aside from that, the combat is genuinely fun, but from what has been presented in the demo, it would be rather uninteresting for those looking for a more challenging and complex FPS experience. The level design for Block Survival is pretty good for the most part too. The one main level you get to experience in the demo is large and interesting to explore. Essentially it's made up of several large islands that you must battle your way through. You move from island to island using a special pad on the floor that bounces, sending you flying through the air. It isn't overly original, but it's functional and fun to play. The one problem I would have with the level design is that it is tonally and environmentally jumbled up. For example, one island consists of what appears to be a stone temple of some kind, full of enemy soldiers. Along with those soldiers, you'll also find pirates shooting flintlocks, among other out-of-place enemies. At night, strange creatures teleport in, which I can only describe as gremlins. Why this happens is never revealed, thus giving the impression it is only implemented to make the nighttime ever more difficult. But the creatures themselves just don't feel fitting, or that they belong to the environment. Overall, from what I've experienced at the level design, it is well done with the exception of the few issues I have mentioned. From what the demo has to offer, I definitely had fun with it, despite its imperfections. The atmosphere to Block Survival is great. It has a real dreamlike quality to it. You feel like you're lost in this mystical land where anything is possible and nothing ever makes entire sense. This has helped with the soundtrack to some degree, especially with the main theme for the game. But when it comes to the combat, the soundtrack is questionable. There's a very heavy bass with a techno-like theme to it, which really doesn't suit the overall atmosphere of the game. It feels like it was put in because the developer liked it as opposed to it being fitting for the game. Also, during the combat, the main theme that plays throughout the game doesn't fade out, resulting in both it and the combat track playing over each other. It just makes things feel ever more jumbled up. It's a minor detail, but one that results in an overall sense of polish, just lowering ever more than the already numerous problems in the game does. If the soundtrack for the combat was just a bit more fitting, it would really help bring out the great dreamlike atmosphere of the game to its full potential. The demo for Block Survival certainly has me intrigued to a certain degree when it comes to the full version of the game, but it hasn't done enough for me to buy it with confidence. Yes, it is fun to play, but the many issues put the overall polish of the game into question. Indeed, a lot of these issues will likely be fixed by now in the full version, or at least I bloody hope so, but that is besides the point. At the end of the day, this demo on the game's Steam store page, and it is a representation of what the full game is. If these issues have been fixed in the full game, they should be fixed in the demo, as it leaves a slightly negative impression in many regards. At the end of the day, from what I've experienced, it is a fun game for a more casual experience of the survival and FPS genres, but veterans of either genre looking for a challenge won't find what they're looking for here. At an asking price of $9.99, it is a bit more than I'd be willing to pay based off the demo, but when on sale, then it would probably be worth trying it out. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, thank you, and have fun.